Good day, fair maidens and gents. What a happy twist of fate that you should stumble into my quiet corner of the woods. My name is Rose, and I would love to tell you my story. Well, it's a magnificent one, filled with dragons, castles, and of course a true love's kiss and a happy ending. The story of Sleeping Beauty is one familiar to many of us. Sleeping Beauty is the tale of Princess Aurora, cursed at birth by the evil fairy Maleficent to prick her finger on a spinning wheel at the age of 16 and die.
On the spindle of a spinning wheel and die.
To protect her from this, three good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, hide her in the forest as a peasant named Briar Rose. And Merryweather grants her the blessing that when she does prick her finger, she shall not die, but rather fall into a eternal sleep, from which she can be awoken by
True love's kiss.
True love's kiss.
True love's kiss.
I don't know. Third base, right?
True love's kiss.
Yes, that old thing. Well, True Love's Kiss seems to have worked for everybody else, why shouldn't it work for her? After an epic battle with Maleficent, who transforms into a fearsome dragon, Philip defeats her and awakens Aurora.
It's Aurora! She's here!
And so they live happily ever after as the kingdom rejoices to have welcomed their princess back.
It wasn't a dream, Father. I really did meet her.
Why, it's Maleficent.
The Princess Aurora.
Now, Father, you're living in the past. This is the 14th century.
Now, Prince Philip was not really my type. I much prefer Prince Eric if you ask me from the Disney universe, but he does have some things going for him. He has a horse, and yeah, that's about it. For me, he's a bit too close with his horse, you know? It's a bit of a weird relationship. Since it's Disney, I'll let it go, even though he does ride around the forest, picking up random peasant women. A bit of a crimson flag if you ask me, ladies.
If my heart keeps singing, will my song go ringing?
About Aurora, we just know that she's a dreamer. She falls in love at first sight with the guy she meets in the forest. That tells you enough already. I would dub their meeting as the best meet cute in old Disney movies. I mean, imagine just talking about your dream guy to some owl and then he just shows up and dances with you. The age-old question every little girl has asked herself is, should the dress have been pink or blue?
Make it pink.
If you haven't guessed from that clip, I'm Team Pink.
Now look what you done. Make it pink.
Flora and Merryweather's fight, whether the color of the dress should be pink or blue, represents an actual argument that the creators had over which color her dress should be in the movie. And it seems that while throughout most of the movie the color of the dress remains blue, they decided to market Aurora in pink. Leave a comment below saying which color you think her dress should be, pink or blue, and why. I'm very curious to see which team wins.
Fools! Idiots! Imbeciles!
Now, Maleficent is probably one of the greatest villains in Disney old movies. It's also worth mentioning Maleficent's henchmen. They are an interesting mix of animal parts and human parts, with this kind of brownish greenish skin, which leads me to believe that Maleficent was probably driven away somewhere out onto the mountain, into the outskirts, and had to transform animals she found there into her obedient servants. If you think about it, Maleficent's story is a quite tragic one, but that's why, in my opinion, she's also one of the more terrifying Disney villains. However, I have to say, she does have style. She also has a raven pet, which plays an important role because the raven is the one that finds Rose Her henchmen don't manage to do that because after 16 years of looking, it's revealed that they were always looking for a baby.
Every cradle.
Cradle!
Animal henchmen can't really be blamed for not having the brain capacity to think of this for themselves. But from her, I expected more. Since it is a story developed over 10 years, I guess it makes sense that there will be some plot holes and problems with continuity.
I know you. I walked with you once upon a dream.
The animation style in this movie is so iconic and so different from all other Disney movies. There hasn't been any animated movie that can measure up to the masterclass in animation that is Sleeping Beauty. Walt Disney wanted to go for a more mature look and show that Disney movies are not just for children.
So he thought design, interesting design, something bold, modern.
More sophisticated, more decorative than any other Disney movie it had ever been before.
When one of the animators, John Hench, came back from a trip to the Metropolitan Museum in New York in the 1950s with some pictures of the unicorn tapestries, Disney was inspired to use these as the background of the movie. And so each background is a masterpiece on its own.
Even if you were to stop the film anywhere in the course of its projection, you would get a perfectly beautiful, composed image, just something you could almost frame and hang on the wall.
However, artist Avon Earl, who was in charge of the backgrounds, also used the Book of Hours as inspiration. This was a devotional book popular in the Middle Ages containing prayers to be said at the canonical hours of the day. As you can see, Earl drew a lot from these books for the stark shapes and straight lines that gave it a more medieval look. It's also worth mentioning that this was Disney's first movie shot in Technirama 70, which is a very wide format for animation. Imagine going from drawing on a piece of paper to drawing on a wall. Well, that's what the animators at Disney had to face as their new challenge. The characters were way smaller in the space, so backgrounds had to be more intricate. However, they had to balance the character design so that they don't look lost in the scene and still move with clarity. The colors of the backgrounds, as you can see, are very vivid and diverse, which created some issues for the animators when trying to design characters that would stand out. They also used multiplane camera technique.
The different elements in the scene were separated according to their varying distances from the viewer. This put the moon on a plane farthest away from the camera. Camera does not shoot sideways, but is placed above and shoots downward toward the drawing.
This technique was used to give depth to the background and give credibility to the characters and their world. Disney also used the real-life voice actors of the characters, or sometimes just models, as references. The animators would do quick sketches of how certain materials flow with movement or when dancing, or for example how hands or eyes look with specific expressions, as they had no other references to go by. There are even whole scenes, like for example the scene of the battle with the dragon, which they drew almost one-to-one with the live-action reenactment of it. If you're interested in a deep dive about the animation and some other fun facts from the animators themselves and the voice actors who worked on this movie, I'll leave the link down below. We can't discuss Sleeping Beauty without mentioning the lovely music. The soundtrack is an adaptation of Tchaikovsky's ballet version of Sleeping Beauty from 1890. Composer George Bruns adapted the original ballet score for the film. Walt Disney specifically requested this as he wanted the film to feel like a moving painting with classical music to match. They also released the soundtrack in vinyl form in 1959. The beloved song Once Upon a Dream is directly adapted from the Garland Waltz in Tchaikovsky's ballet. Mary Costa, who did the voice for Aurora, was a classically trained soprano and went on to perform at major opera houses. Her operatic background really brought this refined quality to the music, which was perfect for our fairy tale princess.
I wonder why each little bird has a someone.
Sleeping Beauty was also the first Disney animated film to be recorded in 6-channel stereo. For that, Disney went all the way to Berlin and recorded a live orchestra playing the whole soundtrack. This gave it a more immersive cinematic sound, which was groundbreaking at the time. Even though at the time the movie was seen as an overambitious risk, today it's seen as a technical and artistic milestone and a masterclass lesson in animation, art, and music production. This was the most expensive animated film ever made. It cost an estimate of $6 million US. Adjusted for inflation, that's about 60 to 65 million today. And even though Sleeping Beauty is now so beloved, at the time of its release, it underperformed at the box office. It wasn't a flop, but it didn't earn enough to justify its huge production costs. The film's high costs nearly bankrupted Walt Disney Productions' animation department. As a result, Disney laid off many animators and cut budgets significantly. So I guess you could say Sleeping Beauty was the end of an era in animated movies for Walt Disney. After Sleeping Beauty, Disney pivoted to cheaper production methods and simplified visual styles, moving away from the rich, painted look of Sleeping Beauty. I have rewatched it a couple of times for the making of this video, and in each rewatch I was paying attention to a different thing. You can rewatch it for the animation, then for the backgrounds, for the music, or just simply to enjoy the story. It really is endlessly rewatchable and really feels like watching a moving work of art. Well, fair maidens and gents, I hope you enjoyed our little story time. Don't forget to subscribe and like below. See you in the next fairy tale. Good day! Aurora. Ivan Earl, Ivan Earl, Ivan Earl, I'll never say your name correctly without mentioning the music.